This man was so unlucky that his face was covered with pustules and he was harassed by phone calls one after another. When he stopped to answer the phone, his car exploded. The explosion was so powerful that it killed 4 people and injured 15 people around him. The forensic doctor arrived at the scene quickly. The air was filled with the smell of barbecue and broken limbs were everywhere. It was disgusting. They thought it was a major traffic explosion, but the car was registered in the name of Masruk, who was the White House's Arab relations advisor and had lunch with the president just last week. If Masruk was implicated in a terrorist attack, it would also mean that the United States had a major national security problem. However, the driver had been blown to pieces, and there were many body parts stuck together with the iron sheet, making it impossible to identify him. Agents from the Department of Homeland Security were eager to find out whether the explosion was caused by Masruk. Bones asked Zach to separate the bones with vegetable oil, then collected the charred bodies and brought them back to the laboratory. The facial epidermis and fingerprints of the bodies were destroyed, and nothing could be seen from the flesh. Zach poured 2 cans of white-bellied dermestid on the charred bones. It is a flesh-eating beetle that can clean the bones from the charred bodies. At the same time, Masruk's wife and brother Farid rushed to the police station. They heard about this from the news and did not believe that it was Masruk who died. They also denied that he was a terrorist and cooperated with the police to provide Masruk's medical records. Bones found that Masruk had recently been to the doctor for a checkup for lupus, a disease that causes pustules on the patient's face. At this time, the bones had been separated. Judging from the bone age and height, they were consistent with Masruk. The complexity of the sutures at the skull vault was consistent with Eurasian ancestry. The uneven pattern of spinal growth showed that he was malnourished in his childhood, which was related to the diet of Masruk's country. In addition, there were multiple fractures in the soles of his feet, which was consistent with the results of Afghanistan's torture measures and consistent with Masruk's personal experience. These identifications were sufficient to prove that the deceased was Masruk. At this moment, FBI agents retrieved a report from the ballistics department, confirming that the explosive was placed under the car and the fuse was connected to the odometer, which meant that Masruk was not a terrorist, but was murdered deliberately. Booth contacted Masruk's wife and returned the information searched in his home. At this time, Masruk's wife was very angry. Not only was her husband wronged, but she didn't know when he could be buried. Bones understood the importance of a complete body to Muslims, and she said she would find the missing parts and restore them as soon as possible. As soon as Masruk's wife walked out, Booth said she had an affair, so Bones and Booth had an argument. How could you accuse someone's personal life casually? But Booth told Bones that the photos were irrefutable evidence. Masruk's wife had recently dyed her hair, lost weight, and had plastic surgery. The last phone call Masruk made before the accident was to her. The two even had a quarrel. In the laboratory, Hodgins brought a bombshell news. He found perchlorate in the chemical composition of the explosives, and this substance would cause bones to deteriorate. What appeared under the microscope was unusual cartilage tissue. Masruk should be suffering from a degenerative disease. Bones speculated that this had nothing to do with the explosion. If the lupus test was negative, it would prove that Masruk had been poisoned at the time. Thinking that Masruk's brother had the same symptoms, Bones and Booth came to Masruk's brother's house to find out. Farid said he was a Christian and Masruk was a Muslim. Their different beliefs created a gap between them. He once tried to live in peace with his brother, but it was difficult. Their problems were not only religious differences. His younger brother said that Masruk's wife had an affair and the affair was with Masruk's colleague. This was undoubtedly a major discovery. Booth immediately summoned the colleague, who had easy access to Masruk's car and a strong motive for committing the crime, but the colleague only admitted to having an affair with Masruk's wife and knew nothing else. At this moment, Booth's boss rushed in and told Booth that he was an informant for the Department of Homeland Security, and even though he admitted to having an affair with Masruk's wife, they had to release him in order not to expose their identities. At this time, Zach found shiny flakes on the edge of the bone. Under the microscope, it turned out to be gypsum. Although this material cannot be used to make explosives, it can be used to insulate bombs. At the same time, judging from the cracks in the skull, Masruk's bones are degenerating, and the speed of degeneration is too fast for any bone disease in the body. It is obviously a sign of poisoning. The liver is the best detector. Any toxin that enters the body will leave traces on it, but unfortunately, Masruk is now a pile of bones. At this time, Hodgins thought of the white-bellied skin beetles. They ate all of Masruk's rotten flesh. The type of toxin can be detected from the white-bellied skin beetles. Bones immediately grabbed a handful and the test results came out soon. Masruk was poisoned by pure dioxide. This thing could not be metabolized in his body for several years, which would cause cancer, diabetes, heart disease, facial herpes, and bone degeneration. Angela used the concentration value of dioxide and the rate of bone degeneration of Masruk to quickly reconstruct his facial features and compare them with the input photos. She accurately determined that Masruk was poisoned 4 months ago, which was the first week of June. Booth believed that the person who poisoned him was that colleague. The colleague who was visited again was a little angry and said that this had nothing to do with him. Just as he was about to turn around and leave, Bones threw him to the ground over his shoulder. The colleague said that he was still undergoing training at the Ministry of Land and Resources in June, and he only entered the country to take up the post in August. All clues were interrupted and the case investigation returned to the starting point. At this time, the laboratory made another major discovery. Hodgins detected that the insulating material used to make bombs was a mixture of gypsum, lead, copper, and asbestos. The fireproof tiles invented by a gypsum company in the 1990s were discontinued after only a few years. It is very likely that the materials for making bombs were taken from buildings. As long as the building using this material is found, the real culprit behind the scenes can be found. Soon, Zach found an architect named William who preferred this material and used it to build the Wardley Park community, which is also the community where Farid lives. Booth turned the car around and rushed to Farid's residence, but when they arrived, he was gone. Bones found a large amount of chemicals and a big hole in the wall of the bedroom, which should be the insulating material used to make bombs. At the same time, there is a technical support manual for the Masrick car on the ground, and the odometer page is folded up. Booth finds the tools for making a bomb under the bed. Farid has already made another bomb and has taken it away. Bones quickly asks Hodgins about the explosion range of a bomb filled with 2 liters of gas dioxide. The answer is about 500 meters. Even if the victim does not die immediately, he will suffer from cancer, organ damage, and other diseases later. They must find Farid before the bomb explodes. Masrick must have discovered his secret and was killed. At the same time, Angela found out that a peace rally was being held at the cultural center, where Arab moderates and congressmen would speak on stage. It seemed that this was Farid's target of attack. Bones and Booth immediately rushed to the venue. After searching, Bones found the suspicious target, but Booth could not shoot rashly without seeing the face. Bones shouted Farid's name loudly, then he turned his head and found something was wrong. He was about to detonate the bomb, but was shot in the head by Booth. The crisis was finally resolved and everyone finally breathed a sigh of relief.